Well, good day, everybody. Good day. No matter what time you're listening, I hope you're having a good time. Welcome to this week's episode. I'm taking a deep dive into equity in Kentucky and what to be aware of, what to watch out, because I'm here to tell you, I started digging into it and I've found millions of dollars quickly, easily able to pick up just contracts that this state is approving that is just one after another, pushing forward this idea of equity. And for those of you who don't know, equity became real popular when the conservatives, not even Republicans, just conservatives started catching on to CRT. And so they couldn't have that. So they had to come up with a new name. So they went with equity. And we're going to talk about that. But first, if you want to stay up to date on everything going on, you want to get your alerts and everything else, you can text the word Liberty to 33777. Once again, you can text the word Liberty to 33777. Additionally, of course, you can subscribe. If you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. If you're listening on a podcast form, subscribe to the podcast. You can like, comment, of course, share this out. This is going to be a good, interesting episode. I think it's worth digging into. And of course, you can always help the campaign out. The Cooperrider for State Treasurer campaign, you can donate at Andrew, the number 4, ky.com. That's Andrew, the number 4, ky.com. With that being stated, let's dig into this. And I think we should first start off by kind of talking about what is equity and how is this communistic. So first, let's talk about communism. Okay, let's talk about the premise of communism is best kind of summed up in one kind of famous quote from Karl Marx, the popular thinker from communism, and it says like this: from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. What does that mean? Well, it means that one person shouldn't go with while another person goes without, just because that person is unable to produce or be a valuable member of society. That's what Karl Marx believed. And you know, the problem with communism is it relies on everybody being a really good person. And the real problem here is people aren't good people. I mean, we've seen our politicians. They're corrupt. We can all agree upon that. And the whole entire thing of how do you see, the free market, the invisible hand of the market, the free market, whatever you want to call it, it is a collective thing. So essentially, whether a product has value or not is dependent upon a collective market think. It's how a market responds to a product. That determines that it doesn't have central planning. When you have an idea that I'm going to, from each according to his ability to each according to his need, means that I'm going to take from somebody and give to another. But who decides what needs to be taken? And how are they deciding that out? And without fail, communism has always turned into mass murder. It just has. Every communistic regime has led to people being murdered and killed, because when you take away everything from everybody and you give them nothing to survive on, that's going to lead to revolution and problems. See, you don't have that issue with capitalism because it's based upon your personal individual self. Nobody in a perfect world of capitalism is coming in and forcing you to do anything. Now, I know people come in, they say, well, you're forced to work if you want to survive and blah, blah, blah. You know what? You would be too in nature if I picked you up, okay? And that's the other thing. Communism completely ignores nature. If I take you and I put you in the woods and you don't do anything, you'll die. That's nature. Nature is, if you don't work, if you don't find food, if you don't find nourishment, if you don't find shelter, you will die. That is nature. All that has happened is we've invented technologies that have allowed us to cover our basics much, much easier, where your entire day isn't dominated by growing food, eating food, finding water, finding shelter. Your days aren't dominated by that. Instead, you have time to do things like listen to me ramble on about politics, because we are not fighting for basic survival. But if you take away all the products that this free market has created, and you're left out in nature, you have to work. So having to work or having to produce or having to create value somehow, some way for you to survive is not new. That is nature. And communism seeks to somehow get away from that by using this magical, all-knowing, omnipotent person that just knows better than everybody else and will be able to redistribute wealth. Or at least they say, well, Karl Marx said that democracy is a road to socialism, saying basically the idea of majority rules. Well, if 51% think something's good, then that's bad for the other 49%. That's a fair amount. And what happens when that 49% is the producers and you think, well, we got to keep taking from them? They have no incentive to keep working because you're just going to take from them. We know the pitfalls of this, right? On top of that, it's truly an evil philosophy. And I know why you're wondering, why are you going so much into communism? Because it's been repackaged and it's being sold to you. And it's even being sold to Republicans, and Republicans are picking it up. Republicans in our government, Republican in our state legislature, Republicans all around are picking up these communistic ideas, not realizing they're communistic ideas or not caring, or worse yet, knows they are and are pushing them because they think it's the right thing to do. Let me show you a couple other quotes here from Marx, all right? The theory of communism may be summed up in one sentence: abolish all private property. The theory of communism may be summed up in one sentence: abolish all property. Recently, we've seen this on Facebook a few times. You will own nothing and you will like it. You will own nothing and you will like it. That is communism in an entire nutshell there from Karl Marx himself. You will own nothing, because if you own something, it can't be repurposed to somebody else. When you own nothing, it means you don't own your labor, it means you don't own yourself, and you're a slave to somebody else. Here's another quote. The first requisite for the happiness of the people is the The first requisite for happiness of the people is the abolishment of religion. That's the other thing Marx pushed heavy: getting rid of religion. Why? Because he wanted to replace it with religion of the state. And that's what we're seeing the left doing now more than ever, is they're robbing people of the Judeo-Christian values, believing they're going to replace it with the state. What has that gotten us? Higher suicide rates, higher mental health issues with children. We've got crime. We've got single parent households. We've got more people falling in. Well, we've got more people just unhappy. People are unhappy. As we pull away and pull back on the moral beings, people are unhappy. But this is something people push. Now, why are people pushing that? One reason why is because they are well-intentioned individuals that are just too silly to think through their entire thought process. See, they think to themselves, wow, it'd be really great if that guy has a lot of money and that guy's poor on the side of the street. And so what we should just do is just take money from that guy and give it to that guy. That's a thought process people have. But the problem is and this is a saying, somebody in my life used to say to me, whereas if you become a millionaire, best you become a millionaire. What they're saying is that if you just get money in your hands, but you didn't do any of the work to get the money, you will waste it. You don't know how to handle it. When people talk about our homeless housing crisis, they think the answer is building houses. Those are silly people, because the issue isn't housing. Actually, it isn't. The answer isn't to build houses. The answer is you have people that either A, don't want to live in houses, B, they're incapable of living in houses because they're unable to take care of it. You can't just build a house. It's got to be taken care of. It's got to be maintained. Everything else, giving them free housing isn't how it works. But that's what they do, because they don't bother to think about the fact that it's personal decisions that lead to situations. Now, why go on about this? Well, let's rewind to CRT again. Okay, so we saw the big push from Republicans against CRT, critical race theory, a belief that an individual is either pushed forward or has different difficulties based upon their race. That was the entire idea. That essentially, if you were born one skin color of some sort, regardless of your personal circumstances, regardless if you've got a mother, a father, if they're rich, if they've got a lot of money or what have you, if you're just born with a certain skin tone, you are innately disadvantaged compared to somebody else born with another skin tone. A belief that says that a white person born to a poor white family in Appalachia has more chances, abilities to succeed, is better set off than a black child born to a married couple, very affluent, making a lot of money, and yet they have more opportunity. They have less opportunities than the poor white kid. Right now, the reason why the belief is because it's easy. The whole idea of the critical race theory is it robs you of being an individual, and instead it reduces people down to an immutable characteristic, their skin color, something they were just born with, they have no control over, and says, okay, well, we're going to create a series of expectations for you based upon your skin color. And that was a big push against. So instead, they had to repackage it. And they repackaged it as DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity, equity, inclusion. Keyword there is equity. What is equity? Well, let me tell you, as we're going to talk about the equity educational teachings in Kentucky, and these contracts have been going forward. But I think where we should talk about what does equity mean to Kentucky schools is we should go to Thomas Woods Tucker, the chief equity officer for the Kentucky Department of Education. That's right. The Kentucky Department of Education since 2020 has a chief equity officer, equity. And he was nice enough to write a little article about what he thinks the difference between equity and equality is. He says equity is respecting each student's culture and providing each student the resource he or she needs to be successful. Equality is treating every student in the same manner, irrespective of differences. So once again, equity is respecting each student's culture, which is confusing because I thought we were all Americans and we all share an American culture. But, you know, I guess if you're just, that's a pseudonym for saying we're gonna basically decide that a person's culture and what a person believes in or what their difficulties is based upon their skin color. And providing each student the resources he or she needs to be successful. Successful at what? What do you call successful? See, that's the other issue with equity is you're comparing them in resource to an outcome. But what is the outcome? And who's to say they want it? Is your outcome how many kids are going to college? So you're going to say, well, look, you know, we don't have enough of this skin color going to college and we have too many of this other skin color. So we're going to work on that. You think that sounds crazy, but this is exactly what's been going on at Ivy League colleges. Asian Americans have been being subjected to higher standards than Black Americans or even white Americans applying to the same school because they're worried that they are getting too many Asian Americans into the college. And so they said, well, we got to change up our standards because we want them each to reach the same level of success. And success in this situation is getting into our college. But they're ignoring the other important part about going into that college, which is that you complete it. Which is the reason why the standards existed in the first place. Because if you're going to accept them, you want them to finish it. And when you adjust your standards, it doesn't mean that they're smarter or that they suddenly now have become more intelligent or smarter or more able. And that's why we just need to adjust our entry standards. It's because it's a hard college. And if you aren't up to the snuff, you're not up to the snuff. And saying, look, we need to change up our standards because of these cultural differences is saying, I'm going to handicap one while I boost up the other. There's a couple great examples about the pitfalls of equity that come to mind. One is one that Charlie Kirk, I heard used once in a speech, and is about if we took a room full of 100 people and they came into the room. Now, all these 100 people have different backgrounds. I have a different background. You have a different background. You have different life experiences. But if we all come into this room, I'm going to give you each $100. And you're going to go out and you're going to come back the next day. And I want to know what has happened. Different things will occur based upon several situations, right? A person could have went and spent their $100 on, I don't know, a video game and some food. They have nothing left. Another person could have went out. Maybe they, I don't know, bought some volatile, cryptocurrency that's gone up 10% over the last day or 20%. So now they have $120 back out of it. Maybe a person has taken the money, did nothing with it, and it's Joe Biden's economy. So now it's worth $95 the next day instead of $100. Maybe all different kinds of outcomes. You could have spent it, you could have kept it, everything else. It was your personal decision. Well, equity says that, well, we need everybody to come back in the same situation. So equity begins to ask the question of saying, how do we achieve that outcome? And then it starts to group people together. And so take this a step further. The way a lot of these people are viewing equity is, imagine you came back and in this room, you had 20 people of minority, let's say Black minority, you had 20 people of Hispanic minority, and you had 60 people of white race. And so they come back in, and irrespective of how actually each individual turned out, equity in this case, because they're using it synonymous to talk about race, would say that, well, if on average these 20 Hispanic minorities came back with $5 less than the Black minorities did, so we're going to adjust that. And so what they would say in this equity example is they'd come and say, okay, well, the Hispanic Americans came back with $5 more, so we're going to lower the Black Americans, how much they're getting with $5, and the white Americans, we're going to come in and let's say they're coming back $10 less than everybody else, so we're going to give them $10 more. And then we're going to do the same thing, send them out in the world, and they come back. Well, they've forgotten the fact that while maybe 40 of those, white Americans have came back, and you gave all of them maybe $10 more because the outcome was indifferent. You maybe are forgetting the fact that 5 of those 10 are actually top echelon, top tier individuals, but you've only looked at them based on their skin color, a racist concept where that's all you care about. And so instead, you've actually have advantaged several of the white people in the group because the average overall was seen as disadvantaged. There's a welfare program we have that looks at things this way. That's the Student Reduced Lunch Program. I think a lot of people don't have an issue with feeding kids at school that maybe come from lower income households. A lot of people don't have that issue. But there's a little difference here. See, if a school has over a certain percentage that qualify for free and reduced lunch, everybody gets it. I'll give you an example. My son was going to public school. He was going to a elementary school that had this in place, where a high enough percentage did in fact qualify for free and reduced lunch. So he also got free and reduced lunch. And I would see people dropping their kids off to that school, driving their Porsches and everything else, also getting free and reduced lunch. Now they should be paying their own way, right? But what we've done is we've reduced it down into a school now, and we're saying, hey, we want to be equitable, and we're just going to group them together because that's what we want to do. So going back to our equity example, so how do you fix it? So you could give them more different money to start off, but they're still going to come back, and there's still going to be differences. So how do we address this now? Well, the easiest way to address it, if we're trying to go through equity, right? Not equality, remember, in the own words of the chief equity officer himself, equality is treating every student in the same manner, irrespective of differences, aka having the same standards. Same standards. So eventually, we're going to end up at a fact that, okay, there's no way we can write this as we're having too many differences. So instead, we're going to send them out with their $100. When they come back, we're just going to redistribute the wealth to make it even. But here's the problem. No matter what you're in, there's always going to be a person who's last. Last in a race, worst player on a team, worst person at farming, worst person at computer program, whatever your industry may be, there's a person who's terrible at it. It's probably not that person's gift, but that person isn't terrible at everything. They're just bad at that one thing, but then they go on. Now, these central planning dictators have decided what they want you to believe is important. See, that's the worst thing. They talk about, oh, it's inclusive. It's about coming together. We're inclusive of everything. No, you're not. You want everybody to live up to your goals for their lives, not their goals, not what they want to do. You're judging them based upon your standards that you've created. That's robbing them once again of their ability to make individual decisions. So, because eventually, if we're going to just change out the outcome once it's happened, we're going to end up having to reduce everybody down to the lowest common denominator. Think of it this way about a race. You've got everybody running a race, but you've got a guy that keeps coming in last because he's just not that fast. And maybe that's not what he should be doing. Maybe he's much better at something else where he won't come in last. But then rather than finding that kid's sport, we don't want him to feel pushed out now. We want to feel like he's included. So what we're going to do is we're going to attach weights to all the other runners' ankles. And we're going to keep weighting them down till everybody's as slow as the slowest kid. We're going to handicap everybody. We're going to make it more difficult. See, but it doesn't allow, once again, this individualism, this ability to, as an individual, to pick what you want to do. I think we can all agree that equity is a very dangerous idea. And it's dangerous because it involves governmental force to create an outcome and a standard based upon whatever the central planner has decided is important. And we see this in all kinds of things. We saw it before when they're looking at gendered in workplaces. Look, it just so happens there's more women teachers than there's men teachers. And it just so happens there's more men construction workers than there's women construction workers. Probably has something to do with temperaments and everything else. It doesn't mean there's no women in construction. It doesn't mean there's no men teachers. It just means that people are wired a little bit differently. And on average, more women are wired to teach than men. And on average, more men are wired to work in construction than women. That's simple to understand, right? But that's not how they want you to view it. See, they don't want you to do what you are good at. They want you to do what they want you to do and that they want you to be good at. Equity, a real issue. A communistic idea, I think we can all agree. And certainly something that small government Republicans shouldn't be pushing, right? Certainly something that if you say, I want a small government and I want an unintrusive government, I don't want it involved in my life deciding what's important than handicapping me or helping other people based upon some arbitrarily set whatever by whoever is currently the bureaucrat in charge of the Department of Ensuring Equality. Whatever random standard they have set. Because it's always failed. Historically, whenever this has been tried, it's failed because nobody is that smart. You know what's best for you. Nobody else does. So how much of your money are they spending on this? Well, let's just go over the past year and let's just go over the simple personnel contracts we were able to find. Okay, easy stuff, right? Let's start off first here. This started back, this was on the Contract Review Committee in August. Oh, hold on here real quick. Let me explain. There's a contract review committee in the legislature. It doesn't have any teeth. So how it works is a contract gets put forward. The contract review committee goes over it. It's a legislature. It's a statutory committee. It meets once a month. They go through the contracts. If there's any they have questions about, they ask their questions. They can approve or deny the contracts. But if they deny any contracts, the governor's office can just overcome it. So if they deny a contract, the governor's office can just okay it anyways. So the contract review committee really doesn't have very much teeth. And that is certainly something that I think they've tried a few times to get some teeth on that committee. I think we should certainly have some teeth on that committee. It's well within the legislature's constitutional role, as they have powered the purse strings, to be okaying certain contracts as they come through, to make sure things like this, your money isn't being wasted on. But let's see here. August 2021. We have $95,527 providing funds for a program specialist / advisor. What did they do? Well, they provide funds to collaborate with the chief communications officer and the chief equity officer as needed, or request to collaborate on interagency and cross-agency projects as it relates to K through 12 equity-related issues for our underserved communities, which were disproportionately impacted by, I'm not going to say it out loud. This includes assisting, only for those listening, it's a word you're not allowed to say, or Facebook and YouTube throw up a disclaimer about misinformation and CDC. So anyways, this includes assisting in the preparation and presentation materials, talking points, and testimony before the Kentucky Board of Education, legislative committees, and other speaking engagements as requested. So first, we got $95,527 going to a program specialist in equity. Then we have December 2021. A diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI coordinator. DEI, there it is again. Remember, that's the replacement word for CRT, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our classrooms are not diverse enough. Well, are they learning? Well, let's not care about their math scores. What matters is that we have a perfect ratio of male to female in the classroom. We don't care what the outcome is. As long as we're hitting going into the race, going into giving them out the money, we're first going to try to make sure they're all equal coming in. Putting individuals, because once again, we're looking at them in groupthink based upon an evil idea of race to separate people out by, an evil thing to do. But we're going to look at them that way and divide them out in that way, and then determine what they need or don't need based upon that kind of idea. Also, at the same time, DEI, mainly the inclusion side of things, is really about transing the kids there. That's what that's about. That's about making sure that your LGBTQ youth feel properly included. And if the school is falling short on its LGBTQ quota, go make some more LGBTQ kids. That's right. So if that is a real thing, by the way, if there is not enough LGBTQ youth in a school, it's frowned upon. It means that you're not being inclusive enough that people can feel like them real selves. So you go find kids that you think might be. Did you see that little boy pick up a Barbie doll the other day? Go talk to him about his sexuality. We need to make sure we are extra inclusive in the school by planting ideas in those kids' heads that they never would have had on their own. But regardless, in December, $100,000 for a diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator, December of 2021. Provide funds for a diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator at the Regional Educational Cooperative for 3 years. The coordinator will meet with school districts and leaders to offer proactive strategies that will help assess, implement DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. $100,000 a year. Well, at least it's just one, right? You're wrong. 3 more. December 2021. 3 more different regions. One in Bowling Green, one in Ashland, one there in Northern Kentucky. Central Kentucky was the one before. Well, heck, at least it's only $400,000, right? You're wrong. Here's 4 more the next month, January 2022. We hired ourselves 4 more DEI coordinators, $100,000 a pop a year each. Here, these ones for the Eastern Kentucky and Hazard out there. Eastern Kentucky, Shelbyville, Richmond, and looks like Western Kentucky. That's 8 DEI instructors, $800,000 a year. Coordinating, right? Well, they're coordinating, but how much more funding are they really getting? Well, let me show you here. Here's another $120,000 digital learning to provide funds for training, resources, and educational opportunities for schools, teachers, districts, student technology leadership program, library media networks, and other digital learning groups. Services focus on building an educational understanding of how schools can best utilize and personalize learning for improving equity for all learners. Not equality. We're not treating them the same. Can't do that. But equity. Very important. Then in June 2022, we have a equity coaching from Engage Learning LLC to the tune of $1.45 million. That's right. $1.45 million contract, right? And I want you to pay attention to something here. Effective dates, May 25th, 2022 to June 30th, 2022. $1.45 million for 1 month of service for equity coaching. In 1 month, they spent $1.45 million on equity, on Marxist teachings. Then in June, another program specialist contract here for another year, $88,000. Another equity person. In July, that same company, Engage Learning, receives a contract valued at $3.3 million. $3.3 million. In our schools, that's $5.8 million. In our schools spent over the last year. Those are easy to find contracts. That's not including your chief equity officer's salary. That's not including his secretary. That's not including the materials. That's not including all the other BS pushing. That is the obvious stuff. Them paying contracts out to teach your kids Karl Marx's greatest ideas and push them on your children. $5.8 million. Taken from you at gunpoint in the form of your tax dollars. You think your tax dollars aren't taken at gunpoint? Try not paying them. See what happens. $5.8 million. You can't even afford to put gas in your car. You can't even afford your grocery bill. Yeah, we got $5.8 million being approved for equity coaches here in Kentucky. And equity coaching on top of the coordinators. So you got 8 coordinators, you got millions of dollars for contracts. I mean, if you're going to teach equity, you could at least do it a little more efficiently, right? You get all these other things, but it's not just in our education department. Here you go. Here's another contract here, University of Louisville, consulting and marketing, $10,000 to address health equity issues in research, practice, and economic development. Little study there. You think that's it? You're wrong. A DEI assessment for the Kentucky Housing Corporation to make sure that it's equitable and diverse, equitable, and inclusive enough. Guys, this is a welfare program, okay? It's to help people with housing, right? I thought the qualifications were the qualifications. What are they going to do? If you're not hitting your equity goals, you're going to go out and make more minorities poor to get them to qualify? Either you qualify or you don't. But instead, they need an equity assessment. 1 month equity assessment. You're right. Sorry, 2 month equity assessment. This is a monthly contract. You're going to love this. $43,200 a month to make sure that the housing programs are properly equitable. $43,000 a month. Don't you just love it when government creates these industries out of whole cloth? Here's another one. Health equity, a health equity fair, training and education. To provide funds to train and certify staff, produce live video series about health education, health equity, and facilitate and administered a health equity fair. This is a whole health equity fair. This is a fair to equity. Right? They don't care if you're dying, if your skin color is the wrong color. They have an equity quota to meet. And they bow to hit it. $144,000 for that equity fair. Here's another one for you. Kentucky Association of Sexual Assault Programs. $140,000. Provide funds to implement a trauma and resilience informed care approach within a racial equity framework to improve access to safe, comprehensive, and responsive person-centered wraparound service and referrals. Talking about sexual assault victims here, and they're caring about the racial equity of that. How about if a person comes to you because they've been sexually assaulted, you do everything you can for them, regardless of their skin color. But instead of spending that money, making sure that we're taking care of everybody equally, because I'm sorry, but in the moment of sexual assault, don't you think that's one moment where everybody's coming to you equally? They've all been sexually assaulted. Wouldn't that be a moment for equality and treating everybody with the same loving and care? No. We need to make sure we treat them with racial equity. Because we need to care more about what their skin color is. So you may ask yourself, you say, Andrew, how does this happen, right? Is this just because we have a Democrat governor? No, it's not. Keep in mind, these contracts all went through the contract review committee. Now, granted, they don't have much teeth when they vote them down. So it's really just kind of more of a political sign to vote it down, but they still didn't. Why is that? First off, I think it's because Republicans in general are very afraid to engage in the culture wars for conservative principles. And they're actually scared of being called racist. You see, they're afraid that if they point out something and say, look, maybe we shouldn't be teaching people and treating people differently based upon their skin color alone because of their racial equity. Maybe we shouldn't be treating sexual assault victims differently because of their racial equity. And if they say that, well, they're just a big racist. That's one reason why. They're afraid to stand up on their values. The other reason why is they're uninformed. Who's going to tell them? The people pushing these contracts, they're not going to tell them. What, leadership in the state Senate and state House? They don't care. In fact, they embrace this stuff. Republican Party leadership, not at the grassroots level, but I'm saying at the national level and the electoral level, embrace this stuff. Why do they do it? Well, it's because they believe they're going to win more votes. See, people are running with their hair on fire from Democrats. And so these Republicans believe, well, maybe if we toe our foot in a little bit into this racial stuff, just a little bit, because, they're calling us racist. So maybe if we toe our foot in just a little bit, we can offer a place for these people to go, a big tent party, right? And so we can offer a place for these people to go and let them know that they're able to come into our party, and we have equity stuff going on too. Because it's not about a principle. Remember, it's about power for the sake of power. It's about winning elections only, not what you do. And they believe it's better for them to win elections, to be better on the economy, but show the same social issues as Democrats be more similar to Democrats on social issues. So that way, the only thing differentiating them is the economy, abortion, and guns. And guns gets a little hazy if we just saw what Mitch McConnell did. And so they believe that is key to continuing to win elections now and into the future. The problem is you're giving everything up you're standing for. Also, at the same time, remember, they're running from those policies. These people are not leaving the Democrat Party that's more focused on race and gender theory than they are the economy to come to a party that's also focused on race and gender theory. But they think if we just toe our foot in a little bit, it'll be okay. It's not. It's not okay. It becomes quite an issue, and people welcome this with open arms, and we need to say stop. We believe in a smaller government. Equity falls directly in the face of it. It literally deals with government treating people differently. If there's one place where we should have equality, it should be equality under the law, equality under our government. Our government should treat everybody, regardless of their socioeconomical class or what have you, the same. The same. That's the one place we need it the most. And that's the one place where we Republicans are supposed to believe in it. But yet, we have this equity stuff being pushed. It gets surprising sometimes when they pick their candidates as well. As many of you know, I'm running for state treasurer. And in the article about state treasurer, and as you go around, been hearing about this guy called O.J. Alika. People are talking about running for this. He used to be Allison Ball's deputy treasurer. Guy who's always worked for colleges, nonprofits, and government, never private industry. That wants to be in a conservative fiscal policy position to push forward conservative fiscal policy. But what kind of policy is he pushing forward? So, what led to me, obviously, kind of this guy popping up on my radar is people talking about him running. So obviously you start to take a look at this person. The first issue you start to see is here. So this is the Association of Independent Kentucky Colleges and Universities, something he's president of. And he retweeted, probably a tweet he wrote, because it's his organization. AIKCU faculty and staff looking for opportunities to share DEI success. Check out the call for proposals for inaugural AIKCU Diversity Summit. It's back on 2021. Pushing out equity. This same character, this same person that some establishment Republicans are pushing, not all, but some establishment Republicans are pushing, some even people that try to call themselves liberty are friendly with. Here he is tweeting out his support for tearing down the Jefferson Davis statue from the rotunda. I'm glad the Historic Properties Advisory Commission voted to remove Jefferson Davis from the rotunda. Now is not the time to spike the football. Let us continue to work together to end any vestige of institutional racism in Kentucky and have the hard conversations along the way. Institutional racism. What is that? That is a belief that if something comes out as racist, if something comes out racially differentiated, then now it is racist in and of itself. It's institutional racism. I'll give you an example. Something here in Lexington they're calling institutional racism is the late policy at the schools, because minority children apparently are being punished at a higher rate than white children were for the late policy. So they're looking at, they call that institutional racism. It's just institutionally racist. So it needs to be changed. Once again, that means you're asking not for equality, but for how you're treated by your government to be different based upon your skin color. A special kind of racism. Of course, he's got tweets where he's talking about how much he loves Obama. Piece of the resistance here. Got him tweeting out this. We need quality training for law enforcement that focuses on de-escalation, relationship building, and bias. This training should not limit the options an officer has, but to protect the community, but rather provide additional tools to treat every person with equal value. AKA the cops need racial biasy training so they're able to treat everybody equally. Because if we don't provide them, if we don't have this special, you're just biased automatically. You're just white, you're biased, you're a racist. Right? That's a belief. If you believe every cop needs that, then what you're saying is they're all racist. Regardless of their skin color, regardless of anything they've personally done, regardless of whatever's happened in their lives, you're saying they're all racist and they all need training. And as you dig deep and you start to wonder about these things, you say, why is this guy, as I talk about him, you're probably like, this guy sounds like a Democrat. Why is he a registered R? These kinds of ideas have no place in the Republican Party. These kinds of statements, diversity and equity and inclusion, just another moniker for CRT, another moniker for asking your government to get involved in people's private lives, have no place. But it's infiltrated. Take, for an example, this commission. A few years ago, 2 years ago, a Republican state legislature created a statutory committee called the Commission on Race and Access to Opportunity. Now, you guessed it. This was a big push by Mr. Alika. He actually sits on the committee. He's one of the citizen members. And the reason why he's citizen members is because he founded Anti-Racism KY before this, a group dedicated to rooting out institutional racism founded on BLM roots. Isn't a surprise when you consider this individual called the Summer of BLM Riots a summer of racial awakening. And of course, he thinks January 6th is a insurrection. His words, not mine. But you wonder, how does somebody like this infect the Republican Party this way? How does somebody who has these communistic ideas about the role of government get so much traction where they're able to corrupt people who should be the guardians of conservative values to greenlight millions of your tax dollars being spent on equity? How does that happen? Simply put, I think it's partially a lack of information. I think a lot of people are unaware, once again, of what equity is. Your legislators are unaware. They don't have a lot of time on their hands. They make sure of it. By they, I mean leadership and stuff. They make sure that legislators don't have a lot of time on their hands to research bills and figure out what's going on. Additionally, as well, the reason why this is allowed to get so much traction in these leftist ideas, as I said earlier, is because they think it's going to win them over votes. Guys, these are the policies Democrats are running from. These are the policies that involve larger government. These are policies that require central planning. These are ideas that belong in a communist party, not in a conservative party. You got to be aware that you need to ask your legislators where they stand on these important issues. And you need to look how they vote. You need to watch who you're voting for. Ask them, how do you stand on all these equity initiatives? See how they respond. I think it's important stuff. Well, guys, that's all we have time for. Please share this out. Tell people about it. Share podcast around. We talked a lot here about millions of your tax dollars being spent on these communistic ideas. I hope as well you can donate to help me out in this campaign, because we have to stand strong for true conservative fiscal principles. You can donate today at Andrew, the number 4, ky.com. Once again, that's Andrew, number 4, ky.com. Thank you guys so much and have a wonderful